I think a bigger problem can come about when they see you as a person. Well, you're not like that, right? So yes, you may be black, but you're not like most black people, right? So, because I've heard that before, literally, I've gotten that, and I've tried to figure out how the hell to process that. So, if you believe we can change the narrative, if you believe we can change our communities, if you believe we can change the outcomes, then we can change the world. I'm Rob Richardson. Welcome to Disruption Now. Welcome to Disruption Now. I'm your host and moderator, Rob Richardson. With me is Kerel Cooper with Group Black. If you don't know Group Black, it's it is the largest Black-owned media collective agency, and it's about empowering essentially more dollars that are being spent, advertising dollars, to go back to the Black creators that are actually creating the value. This started as kind of a call and a mission in 2020 after the awakening of people, I guess, or the reawakening, whatever you want to call it. Right. I kind of feel they went back to sleep a little bit, but that's neither here nor there. But Group Black started at that moment to really bring a reckoning to media advertising dollars and making sure that they are being spent in a more equitable way. And Kerel is the president of advertising at Group Black. And he's also the host of the Minority Podcast, which I've been on. I encourage you to also go on to that podcast. Kerel, welcome.
Hey, Rob, how you doing? It's good to be here. And like you said, I appreciated the time when you were a guest on my podcast, and I'm looking forward to being a guest on yours and this conversation. Excited for it.
Absolutely. And it was great to have you at MidwestCon. Hope you'll come back and we can do some other things together. With MidwestCon. We already got the date, so we want to do more with Group Black and excited to talk more. But I want to get to something. I just want to get right to it, and we'll get to levels in terms of your details of your career and what you're doing at Group Black and how that's going. But I'd like to really kind of go to talk a little bit more about your role traditionally in your career. I read in a podcast, I listened to a podcast that you were on, and you said something that I think every Black leader, or any, frankly, leader that's from a minority group can understand, right? You said a lot of times, almost always in your career, you've either been the only one or the highest ranking Black person in that position, and that brings an additional level of pressure and stress. What type of pressure and stress does that bring, being the sometimes only or the highest ranking African American in the room or at the table?
Yeah. So first, I've been in the digital advertising space for 24 years now. And up until I joined Group Black a year and a half ago, that statement was very true, right? For me throughout my career, either being the only Black leader in the room or the highest ranking Black leader in the room. And I think the additional pressure that it brings, at least for me, is you feel like you are, in a way, carrying the flag and having, the entire weight of the Black community on your shoulders, right? Because if you do a good job, then that potentially opens the door for other Black leaders to come in. If you don't do a job, it could have the opposite effect. And so that's what I mean about the additional stress. I mean, we know as Black people, really in any industry, you have to overperform, outperform sometimes just to get to an even level playing field with your counterparts that aren't Black, right? And so that additional weight of doing what I need to do, trying to overperform and outperform others at the same time, opening the doors for others that look like me.
Yeah, I believe there's a real tension there, too, on many different sides, right? Because it's like you said, you don't want to be the last one at the door. And whether we acknowledge it or not, when you're the first, you do represent for people that aren't aware or don't necessarily have as, let's say, as many diverse experiences or friends. You're going to represent what they think of Black people. Sometimes I've often actually think that sometimes when they see it, I think a bigger problem can come about when they see you as a person. Well, you're not like that, right? So yes, you may be Black, but you're not like most Black people, right? So, because I've heard that before, literally, I've gotten that, and I've tried to figure out how the hell to process that. So on one side, it's that. on the other side, I've also dealt with the tension of other, Black folks, frankly, that have some difficulty understanding how you have to maneuver those politics and the right way to actually go about that. So talk about those tensions. So how do you deal with it? Right? Like sometimes when you do a great job, they don't see it as like, oh, this is what all people can do that are Black. This is maybe you're the exception to the rule. How do you challenge that? And how do you challenge the other side when folks, our own folks, sometimes don't understand what you are actually doing to open the door? Because I've felt that before too. So I love that.
No, and I've talked about this in interviews that I've done in the past too. Earlier on in my career, code switching, right, was a big thing, right, for me and obviously others that probably maybe for you and others that like look like us, right? And
we're telling the truth. That's a part of what one had to do.
Right. And you do it because, again, you don't feel comfortable in the room. Sometimes you don't feel like you belong in the room, and you're doing what you can to fit in, right, in many ways, so that you can stay in the room and try to excel, right? For me, as I've grown in my career, gotten senior positions, and really more confident and grounded in who I am, code switching has gone away. Like I am who I am, and
I am too now. We're good.
Yeah.
We're good.
Like you're hiring me for me, so I'm going to be me, right? And I always try to think about successes that I have, and again, the successes that I have is, attributed to my work, my team's work, my company's work. But I also tried my best to promote successes that other people that look like us in the industry have as well too. If you check my LinkedIn feed, I'm resharing stuff. I'm saying congratulations, doing all that. So I think, to answer your question there, I think you have to focus on doing what you do and make sure, again, you are performing to the best of your ability, but you also should be supporting others around you that look like you in the work that they're doing as well too, because that's the way, you can show that, more, Black people in leadership positions coming up in their careers are performing well and are doing a great job in the subject matter that they're focused on, if you will.
Yes. I mean, I think, where I thought you might be going, particularly when someone says like, oh, well, yeah, you're the, the special Negro or whatever you want to call it, like the one like, oh, you're different. I thought you might talk about like having a teachable moment with some of your colleagues. Like I've had to do that. And it was an extreme example, and I'll be very brief. But I was on the board of the University of Cincinnati, and one of our officers had unjustifiably shot and killed an African-American male. This was before 2020. I mean, we know it's been happening for a long time. And one of my colleagues said, well, he was doing XYZ, and Rob, you wouldn't do that. And, I had to take a pause and make him understand that he wouldn't have known me as the chairman of the board. He would have seen a Black man, a tall Black man. And you have to understand, I've been pulled over, a gun has been pulled out on me by an officer for no reason, and I wasn't doing anything. So I want you to know that it has nothing to do other than anything that this person only saw my color and reacted in a way. And it's not because he was a bad person or I'm an exceptionally good Black person. And so I think I try to use those moments and figure out a way to deal with those moments. I'm not sure if you had a moment like that, and if you can think about how you communicated in a way that was actually constructive and actually taught people something. If you don't, we can move on. I just wanted to.
No. I mean, listen, I have plenty of moments throughout my life and my career, similar to you. I've, been pulled over for no reason. I have had situations where I'm in meetings and someone from an external organization is coming into the room to talk to me and other senior folks. And again, being the only Black person in the room, when they're speaking, they're looking everyone else in the eye and looking past me, right? And in some cases, I'm the subject matter expert in the room, right? And what I try to do in those situations, and what I teach folks who I mentor or who ask me how to deal with those situations, is don't lose yourself, right?
Mm,
You have to be you. Continue to perform, and don't let someone who sees you a certain way and has a level of ignorance bring you down to their level.
mm.
Stay high with that.
Yeah, no, that's great. So, kind of switching a little bit to how you got into this career. How did you get into the career of digital advertising? Like, what brought you here?
Um, by chance, quite
Okay.
frankly, coming out of school in the late 90s and applying for jobs. I went to Crain University, which is a Division III school in Union, New Jersey. And I graduated with an undergrad in management science and a concentration in marketing. And quite frankly, like many kids going through college and coming out of school, I didn't have a clear understanding of what I wanted to do yet. I knew that I eventually wanted to be in marketing and advertising, but as you know, that's very
That's
broad,
very
right?
broad. Yes.
Very broad, right? And so I applied for a role as a sales assistant at a company called EarthWeb, which is a online publisher at the time focused on delivering information and news to IT professionals.
Mm,
And, long story short, I got the job as a sales assistant. And after 6 months as a sales assistant, my VP of sales pulls me into her office and says, "Hey, we're creating this new department called ad operations. Would you have any interest in wanting to move over into that team and be an ad trafficker?" And again, not knowing much about digital advertising at the time,
right.
what ad operations meant, but being very hungry and knew that I just wanted to try different things and perform and move up. And luckily, as I got into the ad operations field, it drew me in, and it drew me in for a number of reasons. One, I think for anyone coming into digital advertising, ad operations is a good entry point. And I say that from experience because it gives you the chance to learn so much about the business because you see it all, right? You see the sales side of things, you see the product side of things, you see the technology side of things using ad servers and data management platforms and all of those tools. And so it was a good way for me to get that foundation. And from there, I continued along in my career in ad operations for the first 14 years of my career. Most notably, I worked at a local news publisher called Advanced Digital, moved up to manager, director level, did some pretty cool things at Advanced Digital, like implementing their first programmatic strategy, implementing their first data and audience strategy and audience extension. And then in 2014, I moved over to a company called LiveIntent, where I made a pivot in my career. I went from ad operations to account management. And for me, the pivot was important because I was going to be in a position now where I could build a team that was responsible for servicing ad operations professionals. So I
Right.
was moving to sort of the other side of the industry, if you will, and built out that account management team, led account management at LiveIntent for about 2 years. And then I decided to make another pivot in my
Yeah.
career.
So before
And
you go to that, really quick
yeah,
on
yeah,
pivoting,
yeah,
because I have a
yeah,
question in between.
yeah,
So
yeah,
often, I think in order to be successful in anything entrepreneurship life, it's about having perseverance, pushing through when tough times. Also having patience, though, because you can be
yeah.
working hard and understanding things do take time. But then it's pivoting too, right? You can have enough patience, you could be persevering, but then you got to pivot. As you talk about your next pivot, all your pivots, how do you know when it's the right time to pivot?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, and I'm not sure you always fully know it's the right time. I think it's a combination of knowing that you want to pivot, being ready, and also being ready for when that opportunity actually comes along, right?
Right.
Because the opportunity could have come along for me, but maybe I wasn't thinking about it and wouldn't have been ready, right? So I
Right.
think it's a combination of those two things. And as we talk a little bit more about my career, one of the things that I've always sort of looked at and said is I never wanted to be put in a box. I think so many times, professionals get put in a box. Companies get put in a box. Oh, this is an ops person. This is a salesperson. This is a marketing person. And I always wanted to be thought about as someone who is a leader and likes to build high performing teams. And no matter what role you put me in, that's what I'm going to focus on doing. And that's what I've tried to do throughout my career, whether it be my long career in ad operations, whether it be the time where I moved over to LiveIntent and built out and ran the account management team for my first couple of years, or even then when I pivoted after running the account management team, pivoted into marketing and led and built out product marketing team, and then eventually all of marketing, and then eventually became the CMO at LiveIntent. What I've always tried to do whenever I pivot is, like I said, what do I need to do to build out high performing teams? That's one. Two, what can I take from my previous experience that will help me in the new role, right? And then also, I think a sign of any good leader is understanding where your strengths are, but also where your weaknesses are, right? Being a CMO at LiveIntent after not really coming up through sort of the marketing professional career, right? I understood that I needed to surround myself with a strong product marketing leader, a strong demand gen leader, a strong creative person, so on and so forth, right? So I think that all of that is super important when you pivot.
Yeah, no, great. So let's talk a little bit about leadership, then go to focusing on Group Black a little bit. So you talked about some of the important traits of leadership you actually discussed just now. I feel one of the most important jobs of a leader is to really create the culture and create a culture of trust. What would you say, like, how do you go about as a leader, and you've led many times, how do you go about creating that psychological safety, that culture of trust where people feel empowered to be themselves and speak up when they feel like things need to change?
Well, first things first, I think as a leader, any leader, you have to do what you say you're going to do, right? That's first and foremost in terms of building trust. If you say that you're going to do something, you need to follow up and you need to make sure that you do it. I also think that as a leader, you have to make sure that your teams know that your door is open to them whenever they need you, right? And for me, I'm not a micromanager in any sense of the word. I hire people who I expect to stand on their own 2 feet, to be able to do their job, and I'm going to give them the room to do their job. But at the same time, they understand and know that my door is open. I'm here to support them. I'm here to provide guidance. I'm here to provide air cover at times. I'm here to break down barriers and challenges that are impacting their ability to do their job. So when it comes to sort of building trust and building a culture for people to be themselves, I think all of those things are involved. I also think it's also important that as a leader that I'm myself, right? Because if they see that I am being who I am, then I think that makes them feel comfortable as well too. There's a level of comfortability that's provided for them to also be themselves.
So what do you think is you talked about being a leader and understanding your strengths and weaknesses. To that point, what do you believe is your biggest lesson, failure as a leader, and how did you grow from that?
Yeah. So again, being a leader for as many years as I've been managing people, because you can be a leader without being a manager, but as managing people, I've probably managed hundreds, if not thousands of people throughout my career. You don't always get those. You don't get every situation right. I have made hires that I shouldn't have made, and I learned from that. I have mismanaged people in the past, and I've learned from that. And so I think that's where, if I think about
Is there any
some of,
one thing that sticks out in terms of like, it can be a moment, if it's confidential, you need to get into the specific details, but just for the audience to learn, like, what was that one moment that's, and I could feel there's something there that's there. Like, what is
yeah.
that?
Yeah, there definitely was a situation in the past where, I had a couple of direct reports, and one direct report didn't feel that maybe I was potentially giving that person. I'm trying to be as I don't want to,
Yeah, I understand.
yeah. Maybe I wasn't giving that individual the time and attention that maybe others that were reporting to me got, right. And as I think back on that situation itself, and I've learned from that, and I've been better from that situation. But as I think back on that situation, I didn't feel that at the time that that person was correct in what they were saying.
Right,
But I
right.
could go back now and see that, okay, yes, maybe I was potentially spending time in other areas versus spending time with that individual. Maybe some of that was, I thought that that individual maybe didn't need as much of my attention as
Yep.
others, but at the same time, right, I take the ownership for that, because I need to be leading in terms of the communication there as well too, if that makes sense.
No, it makes total
Yeah,
sense.
yeah,
It's the challenging part is to really, you have to go beyond sometimes just like the surface, because
yeah,
every different person
yes,
has their different, if it's not a, this is not a direct comparison, but it's close. Like, just like in a relationship, people have love languages, people have ways that they need communication, and figuring out, especially if you have high performers, what that looks like for each individual person is a lot of work, but it's very important, I think, for leaders to understand that, because then people are motivated in the
thousand,
correct
yeah,
way.
1,000%. And what I've learned from that particular situation is I need to meet people where they are,
Exactly.
right, and at the same
I struggle
time,
with that a lot too.
right. Meet people where they are, and also realize that everyone is different as well
Yep.
too, right? Communication style, how much time they may need from you, ideas they want, all of those things. And so that was the biggest lesson learned from that situation, is meet people where they are. And I definitely think that I learned a lot from that, and I'm a better leader because of that situation.
Okay, so now you're leading Group Black and the president of advertising, and as I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, Group Black started really as an opportunity in response to what happened with George Floyd and many others, frankly, and it was a collective moment that it seemed as if more of America was open to investing and looking at things differently, and so Group Black took that moment with media and advertising. So I love to ask, well, based upon how it started, how's it going?
Yeah. Well, so we are 2.5 years into it as an organization right now. So very much still growing, very much still learning, but it's been going great. I think we have grown tremendously over the last couple of years. I will say though that not everyone who made those promises and commitments have
Oh,
lived up to
oh
it.
no, never, right? No,
Yeah. So
that
I
never
want to
happens.
that. Yeah, I want to be clear on that,
Yes,
right? I mean, that's the reality of the situation. Some are doing better than others, but at the same time, we as a company, we continue to grow. We continue to figure out what works best for us in terms of a product offering, and how we execute on those products, how we help our customers reach their goals, and how we live up to our mission and vision, which is to dramatically transform the face of media ownership and investment.
yeah. So like I know Group Black came out with a report about Black creators to really provide objective measurables for things that should be obvious, but it's not.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so to people, I guess, that the value that Black creators are creating economically, but of course not getting that same type of return. Can you talk more about that report and what you hope happens as a result of that report?
Yeah, sure. So first, let me say this. I think as it relates to creators, in many ways, creators are like a new version of publishers these days. And what I mean by that is you can go on various social platforms that exist that are out there, and you can tune in and you can find out what's going on in the world without even going to a traditional news organization or news site, right? You know, there are a number of creators out there that I follow that cover news, sports, entertainment, history, all types of subjects, right? And they're doing it in a very, very unique way. For us at Group Black, again, as one of our product offerings is you know, we work with a network of creators, and again, as we're talking to agencies and brands and understanding what their goals and KPIs are, we have the ability to come up with these bespoke programs and connect the creators with the brands to execute on that. And as we're getting into that business, one of the things that we immediately realized, and there are you know, hundreds of articles out there about this, is that, you know, Black creators, for whatever reason, don't have access to the same opportunities as non-Black creators. And you know, there is this, and we thought about that, and there's this sort of myth that exists that maybe Black creators don't drive the same value as non-Black creators. And so for us at Group Black, again, trying to keep true to our mission and vision of dramatically transforming the face of media ownership and investment, it was important for us to set out to disprove that myth, right? And to do it with data, right? And so we entered into a partnership with Nielsen, where we essentially just ran a study and a research with Nielsen, where we compared 300 Black creators to 300 non-Black creators, and really looked at the media value that they drive. And it's a combination of things, of looking at engagement, increase in followers, right? Those sorts of metrics. And when we dug into the data, right, not really to our surprise, but we had the data to back it up. Black creators are driving just as much, if not higher, media value in a number of different categories like gaming and esports, lifestyle, fashion, so on and so forth, than non-Black creators. And so for us, it was important to put out a very impactful report for marketers, for brands, for agencies, to show them that there's an opportunity here that you are not taking advantage of, right? And for any marketer and brand, they're always looking for, okay, how do I grow my business? How do I reach my goals, right? Where's the next opportunity? And for us, it was great to really create this first of a kind Black creator report that showed in detail how Black creators drive media value.
What would success look like for Group Black?
That's a great question. That in many ways that we don't exist in the future, right? In many ways that
That's
we,
an excellent answer, by the way.
that we create, you know, a level playing field for media ownership and investment, right? And that's what we're trying to do. So in many ways, it's for us not to exist.
Oh, that's a great answer. So, okay, I got a couple of rapid fire questions. I like to ask some folks on here. Let's see. What advice would you give to your younger self, and what would you ignore?
What advice would I give to my younger self? Think before you speak. And I give that advice to people that I mentor now, and I follow it myself even today. I mean, you can get into very heated conversations, right? And if you respond emotionally, if you respond in the heat of the moment, you may ultimately say things that you regret and you can't take back.
Yep.
And even today, I make sure I follow that when I'm having, maybe a spirited debate with someone, or I need to write a very sort of direct but productive email, I'll get up from my desk and I will, go take a walk or, count to 20 or something like that, right? You never want to respond when your emotional state is very high.
Yep. An emotional response to a power situation will decrease your opportunities and power exponentially, even though you'll feel great in that singular moment, like I got this out. That person knows exactly how I feel. And that's not, but your feelings aren't even a real thing. They're just how you need to be able to actually control them. That's something I've had to appreciate more. I'm a very passionate person, if you can't tell.
Yeah.
Right. But I work towards like, okay, you have to really think things out because very rarely is it worth blowing up a bridge. Very rarely.
Right.
It's like
right.
you can literally be at war with somebody, then you got to figure out how to work with that person later. And so if you can preserve some status of the relationship, you should always do it. I mean, that's definitely good advice. I agree. Okay. A theme for your life, or let's say a digital ad for Kerel Cooper's life. What would that be and why?
Positive impact. Every situation that I'm in, every company that I go to, every team that I try to build, I try to leave it better than when I found it. Or people that I mentor, I try to make sure they leave our mentorship with me providing something that has had a positive impact on them. And so, at this point in my career, anyone that I engage with, any company that I work with, that's what's the most important for me. How do I leave a positive impact?
All right. You have a committee of 3 in business or life. Who are these 3 people advising you and why?
Wow. A committee of 3. That's a great. I'm going to go 1, my dad.
Okay.
Advising me. He has been obviously, in my life, a key figure in making sure that I was successful. I stayed out of trouble, and he always gave me great advice. I'm going to go with the counselor who admitted me to Crain University. His name is Bruce McIntyre. He was a sort of a big brother to me while I was on campus for 4 years. And those 4 years really set the foundation for my professional career in many ways. So that's 2. And then you want 3, right? Let's see. Third person. I'm trying to
you don't have to do 3 if you're
all right.
3. We don't have to 2. Force it. If it's not there, it's not there.
Yeah. All
right. What's an important truth you have that very few people agree with you on?
Politics. and I'll explain that.
You got to explain that a little bit more.
Especially in this day and age, right? You know this. I mean, it's either you are like, it feels like you're either far right or far left, right?
Yep.
I don't consider myself a member of either of those parties, right? When I vote, and by the way, I voted for Democrats before, I voted for Republicans before, I voted for independents before, whether that be at the national, state, or local level. For me, it is all about, do I think that candidate is going to leave a positive impact, period. And so in this day and age, this, man, if you got to be on one side or the other. I'm on neither side. And and I will vote for any candidate that I feel will leave a positive impact.
Yeah, it's difficult though. It's we're tribal beings as human beings, right? Yeah. And so you're in digital media, so you can appreciate this, how the media works, how it's always worked, but particularly now that we have social media, it can amplify some of the worst qualities of human nature. And the goal is, of course, to keep you engaged. The challenge with that, though, is that it's about keeping you engaged, not if it's truthful, not if it's accurate, not if it's good for you. And I do not have the answer, but I do believe fundamentally there has to be something where we come to a reckoning about how we interact with each other online, because it is literally, I think, the biggest threat to us that's going to happen now, because this is war obviously happens, but even as bad as we know there's some wars going on now, relative to human history, it's very low. Relative to human history. That doesn't mean there's not horrible things going on. So make that very, very clear.
Yeah.
Like put everything in perspective. If you know how many people died, over 50 million people died in World War II, right? War was that happened everywhere, all across the world at any time. And then the other thing that would kill us was, of course, plagues and germs. Generally, still, out of all the statistics, more people die from sugar and suicide than they do from soldiers collectively. So I believe our biggest challenge going forward as a human race is going to be how we actually interact with each other with technology and artificial intelligence, because those things they already have, and they're going to continue to amplify how we connect with each other. And if there's no thought to positive impact, as you say, as into human emotion and to calming tensions, then it's going to lead to more divisions, and it actually could make us revert more to wars and things like that. That is my biggest concern. And I'm a pro-technologist. I'm also, though, I believe in policy that we need to do that can both promote innovation, but then still sets transparency, because I do think we're going to need to reckon with this. But until that point, we as individual humans have to talk to our kids and everybody else about how to decipher what is happening in the world, because disinformation and how the media is working is one of our biggest challenges. That's
listen, I 1,000% agree with you on the technology piece. And as a parent of a teenage daughter right now, that's one of my number one concerns. I mean, when you and I were in high school, if we had to deal with a bully or someone that we didn't like, right, we dealt with it for a few hours and then we went home. Now it's 24/7 with the device that's in everyone's hands, right? And that's just one example of many.
There's one example. Another one, while we're on this point, then we'll conclude, is that, I was talking to my friend, we were talking about our kids too, and that, if you notice this, because we grew up around the same age, like kids don't dance at all much anymore in terms of groups and things like that. And you know why that is? I believe it's because they're worried about social media. Like, and when people get on there, they're worried about people are going to make fun of them forever. So like they're actually losing out of the experience of what it was like to feel free and connect.
Because they're always on. There's always, there's always a phone or a camera or something to that effect where, again, us going back to that age, that was never the case.
You didn't have to worry about somebody dunked on you or something like that. I play basketball, right? Like you don't have to, the thing wasn't highlighted over and over again a million times people to see. Now kids worry about more than like scoring points. They say, I don't want to be on social media with somebody dunking on me.
Because back when we were younger, yes, that will live in your mind forever. Now it lives for everyone to see forever.
Exactly. So those are the challenges. Again, I don't have the answer, but I do think we have to, I think we're just now starting to appreciate what that has done to the psychological and the brains of kids. Because we were at the time where it affects us too, but we've been without it. So we also know that world too. And now we're at a world where that's literally hardwired into who they are. And it's not like you can opt your kids out of social media. They won't be able to do anything. So we got to figure out how we have that balance.
We have to embrace it, but there has to be a balance.
There has to be a balance, and there has to be, and it's the reason why the work that Group Black is doing is so important. There has to be a balance in how we're telling the message, because then that can affect how people view Black and brown people, because there's not a thought about that in the algorithms and everything else. So I actually think it's a higher call than just when we talk about investment and ownership. It's also, what are we outputting there that is actually telling the full story of the Black and brown experience?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Kerel, it's been a pleasure having you on. Always good connecting with you. Great having you on. Appreciate you, brother.
All right. Thanks, Rob. Appreciate it.
All right.